I've lived alone in this coastal town for almost 10 years, ever since my husband died. Winter here smells like salt. The wind whistles through the doorframe, and the waves keep tapping the seawall like a clock that never stops. In December 2025, every house is wrapped in Christmas lights, every door has a pine wreath. And I have one tiny habit. Each morning, I leave a warm pastry and a cup of coffee by my mailbox for Hank, an older mailman with a bent shoulder and a worn blue jacket passing my house as faithfully as the tide. We weren't close in the way people spill their whole lives. Just a nod, a small smile. The comfort of being remembered. Until the night of December 23rd, the ocean wind howled like it knew my name. Then came a knock, slow, heavy, wrong. When I opened the door, Hank was standing there, pale, shaking, holding a tablet. He looked straight at me and whispered, "Don't panic, but you're being targeted. My name is Nora, and I am 61. My town sits on the coast of New England. Summer tourists come for the lighthouse photos, lobster rolls, whale-watching boats. But winter is different. Winter is emptier, louder in all the wrong places. Fog on the windows, the harbor ropes creaking, the smell of wet wood and cold metal. My house is an old white clapboard place with paint peeling at the corners. From my living room window, I can see the rock seawall and the gray ocean beyond it. My husband Ben and I bought this house in 1999, back when hardly anyone knew this town existed. Ben repaired boats. I did bookkeeping for a small shipyard. We weren't rich, but we were steady. And that used to be enough. Ben died of a sudden stroke on a winter night almost 10 years ago. After the funeral, I thought grief would fade like a bruise, but it didn't. It just sank deeper, like sand, until Christmas winds stirred it up again and made my eyes burn. At the start of December 2025, I began baking simple butter pastries. Nothing fancy, just warm, a little cinnamon, so I could leave them for the mailman on my route. I don't even know why I started. Maybe because I missed Ben. Maybe because Ben always said, people don't need you to give big. They need you to give at the right moment. That morning, I saw the mailman standing in the road, arms full of letters, the wind slapping his face red. He nodded at me, the kind of nod someone gives when their work has become invisible to everyone else. So I carried out a paper bag of warm pastries and a cup of coffee and set it under the mailbox. The next day, I found the empty cup and a small note. "Thank you. It's been a long time since anyone thought of me." I stood in my kitchen holding that note longer than I should have. It wasn't the thank you that got me. It was the reminder that I could still make a day warmer for someone. Even when my own house felt cold. His name was Hank. I learned it from the way he signed delivery slips, handwriting a little shaky, but always careful. He didn't talk much, neither did I. Sometimes he'd just say, "Big surf today," or "Cold one." And that was enough. Mid-December, the town started buzzing about something else, a harbor expansion project. People said we'd get a new marina, more shops, a small hotel chain, a widened road along the shore. Some folks lit up like they could smell money in the air. They said, "Jobs for our kids." Others got quiet. They said, "Rent will rise." And the elderly will get pushed out. I stayed out of it. I was too tired for arguments that didn't save anyone. And then Cody moved in. 3 houses down, a new tenant arrived early December. A guy in his late 20s, brown hair, always in a knit cap, with a smile that looked like it had been practiced in a mirror, warm, harmless, safe. The first time we met, he brought over a box of store-bought cookies. "Just moved in," he said. "Wanted to introduce myself. You live alone? If you ever need help fixing anything, just call." I thanked him. Polite. In a small town, politeness is the coat you wear to stay warm. But within days, Cody started asking questions that made my hands pause mid-task. One afternoon, I was untangling a string of Christmas lights on the porch when he stood at the bottom step and asked, casually, "What time do you usually go to church? Christmas service gets packed, right?" I gave him a vague answer. He smiled again. "Do you have family nearby? Must be nice when everyone comes home for Christmas." I told him my son lived far away. I didn't give details. I didn't want a stranger holding the address to my heart. Cody nodded like he was filing it away. After that, he kept accidentally appearing whenever I was outside, when I dragged my trash bin out, when I carried groceries in, when I came home from church. Always polite. always offering to help. But tucked inside that politeness were questions that felt like grit under my eyelid. You go to bed early? Do you have a spare key? Do you ever stay overnight somewhere? Does anyone visit you regularly? I tried to talk myself down. Nora, maybe he's just chatty. But at night, when the house went dark, those questions kept returning like the waves, steady, relentless. On December 18th, a strange envelope showed up. No stamp, no postmark. My name printed in stiff block letters. Inside was a blurry photocopy of what looked like property paperwork, plus a sticky note. Don't make this hard. Someone wants to buy your house. Sign. I sat there frozen. I hadn't listed my house. I hadn't discussed selling with anyone. I shoved it into a drawer and told myself it had to be a mistake. Then, on December 19th, a package arrived with my name on it. I hadn't ordered it. When I called, customer service said it was signed for. Signed for. I stepped onto my porch. No one there. I pulled up my doorbell camera. All I saw was a fast-moving figure in a knit cap passing the edge of the frame. On the night of December 21st, I woke around 2 a.m. to a metallic scrape at my back door lock. Just a moment, then silence. I held my breath behind the curtain. Outside was pure black. The wind shoved tree branches against the glass. I didn't see anyone. But in the morning, there was a fresh scratch on the lock. I almost called the police. Almost. Then the old voices in my head showed up. Things people say to older women living alone. You're imagining it. You worry too much. It's nothing. I felt ashamed of being scared, like fear was a personal flaw. The next morning, December 27th, Hank stopped longer than usual. He looked at my face and said softly, "You okay? You look worn out." I was going to say I was fine, but I was so tired of convincing myself. So I told him. The strange letter, the package, the scratch on the lock. Hank didn't laugh, didn't tell me I was overreacting. He just nodded, then said quietly, "You've been watching Cody, haven't you?" My stomach dropped. "How do you know?" Hank lowered his voice and glanced at the road. "He hangs around your mailbox, asks me questions. Where you go, when you're home, if you've got family. One day he even asked me to sign for a package in your name." My throat tightened. "Did you?" Hank shook his head immediately. "No, I told him I can't. It's against policy." He smiled like it was a joke. I stood there cold inside my own skin. A small voice in me said, "Nora, this isn't a feeling anymore. It's a pattern." That night, I locked up earlier than usual, pulled the curtains, put my phone within reach like a life jacket. And right before bed, I pulled that strange photocopy back out of the drawer and stared at it again. Really stared. That's when I noticed something that made my blood turn to ice. In the lower corner, there was a file number, one you'd only know if you'd had access to my property records. I stood in my kitchen holding that paper, listening to the wind scream through the gaps. And I understood. Someone wasn't just watching me. They were holding my life in their hands, on paper. Cliffhanger, end of Act 1. Just as I turned off the kitchen light, my doorbell rang, once, then went quiet. I opened the camera feed and saw Cody standing inches from my door, not smiling, staring straight into the lens. In his hand, a thick stack of blank papers and a pen. I didn't open the door that night. I watched from behind the curtain, heart pounding. Cody waited, then finally walked off. But before he left, he leaned close to my camera and murmured, quiet enough to feel personal, loud enough for the microphone to catch, "You'll sign. Everybody signs." I slept in shards. The next day, December 23rd, I tried to live like a normal person. I bought a little pine wreath and hung it on my door like decoration could cover fear. Hank still came by, took the pastries, nodded. But this time he didn't leave right away. He lingered, eyes on me like he was weighing something. That night, close to 9 p.m., while I was wrapping donations for the church Christmas drive, I heard a knock, 3 slow, heavy thuds. I peered through the peephole, a blue postal jacket. I opened. Hank was standing there, pale, trembling. In his hands, a tablet and a stack of documents. "Nora," he said, using my name for the first time. "You have to see this, right now." I pulled him inside, locked the door. 2 locks. Hank didn't even take a sip of water. He turned the tablet toward me. It was footage from the safety camera mounted on his postal truck. December 22nd, Cody hovering by my mailbox, scanning the street, then walking straight up to Hank's truck. Cody held out an envelope and pointed toward my house. Hank shook his head. Cody shrugged like it meant nothing. December 23rd. Cody again, but this time with a second man. Long coat, glasses, a leather briefcase. Cody handed over a thick set of papers and pointed at my house. The man looked at the paperwork, then looked at my home. Not like a home, but like merchandise. Hank paused the video. His voice sounded raw. He wasn't making conversation, he's building a file. He set the stack of papers on my kitchen table. I saw the header immediately, real estate transfer agreement. And at the bottom, a signature that looked like mine. One glance told me it wasn't. My real signature has a small, sharp bend in the N. This one was smooth, too smooth, like someone had rehearsed it. Hank swallowed hard. Today at the post office, he asked me about you again. If you had heirs, if you had family close by, I wouldn't answer. He smiled, and then he slipped and said, "We've got to close this by Christmas." The word close hit me like a shove, like I was the deal. I reached for my phone to call police, and my doorbell rang. The camera showed Cody with a gift box tied in a bright red bow, smiling wide. "Miss Nora, I brought you an early Christmas present," Hank whispered. "Don't open it." I hit the intercom. "Cody, it's late. We'll talk tomorrow." Cody kept smiling, eyes locked on the camera like he was staring straight through it into me. "I just need you to sign something, that's all. Tiny little thing, sign and I'll be gone." The word sign made my scalp prickle. I called 911. Outside, Cody's voice turned softer, honey sweet. "Don't make this hard right before Christmas. You live alone. We're just trying to help you have money for your retirement." Help. That's what they always call it. 2 officers arrived. They looked at the papers, looked at me. One asked, almost bored, "You're sure that isn't your signature?" My eyes burned. Fear, anger, and that familiar humiliation of being treated like a nuisance. Hank set the tablet down and played the footage again. "I have video, GPS, timestamps. I've run this route for 27 years. The officer's face changed. He straightened. "Okay," he said. "We're opening a case. Do not open your door for anyone. Call us immediately if they return." They left, and the quiet that followed wasn't peaceful. It was the kind of quiet you hear right before the ocean flips. Hank stood near my fireplace watching the flames and asked softly, "Nora, do you know why I'm doing this?" I shook my head. His voice broke. "Because I didn't once." He told me about his daughter, Marissa. When she was younger, she'd said a man was lingering near their house watching her. Hank had thought she was anxious, thought it was nothing. He was working nonstop, running his route, paying bills. Then one night, Marissa was attacked in a parking lot. She survived. But she didn't come back to him. She cut contact, moved away, shut the door on her father. "I didn't protect my kid when she needed me," Hank said, eyes wet, "but I'm not letting it happen to you." I stood there with a lump in my throat, thinking of Ben, thinking of all the things people realize too late. The next morning, December 24th, I went to the grocery store for butter and milk for the church bake drive. I'd barely rolled my cart past the fruit display when I heard voices behind me. "That's Nora, right? Heard she called the cops over some property thing." Another woman laughed, probably imagining it. The harbor project would finally put this town on the map, jobs for our kids, and she's trying to stop it. I turned. 2 women I'd seen at church. They looked at me like I was a problem. I kept my voice steady. "I'm not trying to stop anything. Someone forged paperwork to sell my house." One shrugged, cold as a freezer aisle. "Sell it and take the money. You live alone. Why cling to a big old house?" That sentence landed like a slap. My hands tightened around the cart handle. "That house is my life, Kya," I said quietly. "It's not, no big deal." They turned away like I'd made them uncomfortable just by existing. Back home, my phone buzzed nonstop. The town Facebook group had a post. Residents stirring panic before Christmas over harbor development. People tagged my name. People wrote, she hates progress. Old lady paranoia. She's making everyone miserable. That night, I still went to church. Not because I was brave, because I was terrified that if I stayed alone, fear would eat the last soft parts of me. Inside the sanctuary, I felt the space people made around me. Conversations paused when I walked past. Eyes slid away. After service, in the foyer, Pam, a woman with influence, the type who organizes fundraisers and knows everyone, came straight at me. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "Nora," she said, loud enough for nearby people to hear, "could you please stop making things worse right now?" "Worse?" I repeated. Pam tilted her head. "People are saying you're accusing neighbors with no proof to pressure the harbor project. You know this town needs that project." I heard a few soft murmurs. "Yeah, exactly." I spoke slowly, forcing my voice not to shake. "I reported it because someone forged a contract with my signature. Not because of any project." Pam shrugged. "Paperwork mistakes happen. You didn't need to drag police into it. It's Christmas." I stared at her. "If tomorrow you saw a contract selling your home, signed with your name, and you never signed it, would you call the police?" Pam's lips pressed together. She didn't answer. Instead, she switched targets. "You live alone. You get worked up easily. Are you sure you didn't misunderstand someone trying to be kind?" "Kindness doesn't show up at 9 p.m. asking for signatures," and I said, voice tight. "Kindness doesn't threaten." The foyer went quiet for a beat. Hank walked in right then. He saw my face, the little circle of people, and he didn't hesitate. "I have proof," he said. "Postal truck camera, GPS, video. I already gave it to police." Pam snapped toward him. "Hank, you're a mailman. You shouldn't be involved." Hank nodded slowly, eyes red. "I used to think that, Ike," he said. "And because I didn't get involved once, I lost my daughter." His words hit the room like a stone dropped in water. Silence rippled. Then Hank looked at everyone and said carefully, "You can want development. Fine. But don't let wanting money turn you into the kind of people who call a threatened woman a nuisance. Don't do that." I left with Hank afterward, my chest heavy. At noon on the 24th, the detective, Morales, and my attorney, Kathy, took me to the county registry office to lock my records. On the computer screen was a scheduled filing for my address on December 26th, a quitclaim deed. Kathy leaned close and whispered, "If they record it, you'll spend months in court trying to undo it." My legs felt hollow. That same day, the town held an emergency meeting at City Hall about the harbor project. Kathy said, "You need to show up. If you disappear, they'll tell the story for you." In that wooden auditorium, Pam's husband stood up and spoke in that calm, righteous tone people use when they think they're the hero. "We need to be wary of individuals who spread fear and obstruct progress." He didn't say my name. He didn't have to. Heads turned. Eyes pinned me. I stood, heart hammering. "My name is Nora," I said. "I'm not trying to stop progress. I'm trying to keep the home I paid for my entire life." I held up the forged paperwork. "This is a transfer agreement with my forged signature. I didn't sign it. I have video." He frowned. "Could be a misunderstanding." "Misunderstandings don't scratch your back door lock," I said. "Misunderstandings don't threaten. You live alone. Who would know if something happened?" The room went still. Then an older woman jumped up. "I got a call last week asking me to sell my house." An older man said, "There's weird paint marks on my fence. I thought it was kids." The mood shifted, from doubting me to realizing they might be next. But as I walked out, I still heard someone mutter behind me, "Either way, the project's going to get delayed because of her." Wind slapped my face outside. I felt like I was standing between two tides, justice on one side, the town's hunger on the other. That night, Christmas Eve, my doorbell camera alerted again. On the screen was Cody. No gift, no smile. Beside him stood the man with glasses. And Cody said softly, coldly, "Miss Nora? We know you just went to see a lawyer." I didn't open the door. I called 911, and before police arrived, Cody left a small box on my doorstep. Officers opened it with gloves. Inside was a sleek fountain pen and a note. All you have to do is sign. Detective Morales looked at me, her eyes dark. This isn't just fraud, she said. This is intimidation. They decided to set a trap that night. An unmarked car parked nearby. Officers posted where they could see my back door. I turned off most of the lights and left only my little Christmas tree blinking in the corner like a tiny heartbeat. Hank stood outside with Morales. I stepped onto the porch, wrapped in a thick scarf. Hank, I said quietly. He turned, and in that porch light, he looked older than I'd realized. I'm sorry I dragged you into this, I whispered. He shook his head. You didn't drag me. I walked in. Because this time, I need to do what I didn't do. I asked gently, like I was afraid my words might crack him, do you still have Marissa's number? Hank looked down. I do, but I'm afraid to call. His voice sounded like a man carrying a stone in his chest. You can't change the past, Hank said, but you can stop letting it drown you. Hank exhaled, eyes shining. I went into my kitchen and wrote Marissa a letter, short, careful, telling her that on the nights of December 23rd and 24th, her father stood beside a woman living alone while the whole town doubted her. He didn't stay silent. I handed Hank the letter. If you can't call, I said, send this. He held it like glass. Just before 1 a.m., on December 25th, my back camera flashed an alert. On the screen, Cody and the man with glasses were at my rear door with tools. No more smiles, no more pretending. They moved like men who'd decided to take what they wanted. Then floodlights snapped on. Police! Thundered through the night. Cody bolted. The other man froze. Footsteps, shouting, ocean wind roaring, and I heard Cody scream, his voice cracking. It was just a signature. This old lady ruined everything. Police caught them near the seawall. As they cuffed Cody, Morales said flatly, she's not an old lady. She's a citizen. When they searched Cody's rental, they found what made the whole town go silent. A list, more than 20 homes, mostly elderly people living alone, notes about routines, church times when kids called, which houses had cameras, which didn't. Next to my name, a line read, Nora, alone, soft, needs pressure. My vision blurred. I'd thought I was just a quiet older woman trying to survive winter. To them, I was a target. After Christmas, the town stayed split. People couldn't call me paranoid anymore, not with arrests and evidence. But I still heard the whispers. The project's delayed. We're losing opportunity. All because some old folks won't move. At night, I'd lie awake listening to the wind and wonder, if I hadn't called the police, would they have stopped? Then I'd remember Cody's voice. Everybody signs. And I understood. The biggest win evil gets is when the victim convinces herself to stay quiet to avoid trouble. Cliffhanger, end of Act 3. A week after the arrest, a letter arrived with an out-of-state stamp. Not local mail. Strange handwriting. My heart hit my ribs like it knew what was coming. I tore it open and saw the sender's name, Marissa H. I read Marissa's letter with shaking hands. It wasn't long, but every line felt like someone stepping onto a thin bridge. Nora. I heard my dad's voicemail, and I read your letter. I don't know if I'm ready to forgive yet, but I want to come home. I want to see him. Thank you for being there when he had no one. I handed it to Hank. He stared, then slowly sat down like a man who'd just been given back a limb. He didn't sob loudly. His shoulders just trembled, small, quiet, like a candle flame in a draft. On January 3rd, 2026, Marissa came. The air was still cold, the ocean still gray. But the harbor looked different that day, like something was being tried again. I stood beside Hank on his porch. He wore his old postal jacket and had buttoned it wrong because his hands wouldn't stop shaking. He kept staring down the road like a kid waiting for a ride. A car pulled up. Marissa stepped out first, hair tied back, eyes that looked painfully like Hank's. Then a little boy, maybe 5, hopped out holding a stuffed bear. Marissa stood still and looked at Hank. Hank took one step, then stopped, like he was afraid he'd ruin it again. Marissa, he said, voice breaking. She didn't run into his arms. She just stood there and said one sentence that made my throat close. Dad, you're old now. Then she held out her hand. Not a hug, just her hand. Hank grabbed it tight, like if he let go, she'd vanish. The boy tilted his head and asked, Grandpa? Hank broke. Tears spilled from a man who'd carried guilt too long. The boy ran in and wrapped his arms around Hank's legs. Hank bent down and held him like he was holding a miracle. I turned my face away because I didn't want anyone to see me crying. But the tears came anyway. That night, before going back to Hank's place, Marissa stopped by my house. She looked at my small Christmas tree. I still hadn't taken it down and asked softly, How long have you lived alone? Since my husband died, I answered. She paused, then asked gently, Do you have kids? I do, Ethan. But he lives far away. We didn't have one big fight. Life just pulled. Calls got fewer, Christmases got fewer, and I learned to say, I'm fine, so no one would feel guilty. I told her the truth. I have one, but I let the distance get too big. Marissa looked at me for a long time, then said, You helped my dad find his way back. Maybe you should give yourself a way back too. That night, I held my phone and stared at Ethan's name until my finger stopped shaking. Then I called. It rang. His voice came through sleepy. Mom? Just that one word. Mom. And my throat tightened so hard I couldn't speak right away. Ethan, I said slowly, I'm sorry I let silence stretch so long. There was a pause. Then he exhaled. Are you okay? I looked out at the dark ocean, the distant harbor lights. I wasn't okay the last few days, I admitted, but I'm still here, and I want you home next Christmas. He didn't promise immediately, but his voice softened. I'll try, and Mom, please don't be alone anymore. I sat there after we hung up, not knowing what the future held, only knowing I'd opened a door I'd kept shut for too long. The following week, Hank and Marissa invited me for dinner. Nothing fancy. Soup, bread, a child laughing, a chair that wasn't empty anymore. The little boy called me Aunt Nora by the second visit because he'd heard Hank say, Nora helped me. I smiled through tears. At 61, people like to say your life is mostly about packing up. But I started to believe life could begin again, slowly, quietly, starting with a warm pastry left under a mailbox. And then, late in January, on a day when the wind still bit but the sun looked a little kinder, I heard a car stop in front of my house. I peeked through the window. A gray rental. I wasn't expecting anyone. I'd trained myself not to expect because expecting can hurt. The doorbell rang. I opened the camera feed and my heart stopped. Ethan stood there, my son. His hair was longer than I remembered, a bit of scruff on his jaw. Beside him was a woman I'd only seen on video calls, his wife, Rachel. And behind them was a little girl, maybe 3, hugging a stuffed bunny. Ethan looked into the camera and said, small and careful, Mom, I'm here. I opened the door. Cold air rushed in, but I couldn't feel it. My knees went soft like dough. Ethan stepped inside and looked around the house, looked at the little Christmas tree I still hadn't put away, then looked at me, really looked at me. You got thinner, he said. I almost said, I'm fine. The old habit. But I didn't want to lie anymore. I was scared, I admitted, voice shaking. I was so scared. Ethan froze. Then he wrapped his arms around me. It was an awkward hug, the way grown men hug their mothers when they're not used to holding on too long. But he held tight. I'm sorry, he whispered. I should have come sooner. I saw what people were saying online, and I finally understood what it means for you to be here alone. Rachel touched my shoulder, gentle. We're here for a few days, okay? I nodded. I couldn't speak. My throat felt locked with salt water. The little girl tilted her head. Grandma. My chest ached, warmly. I crouched and opened my arms. She ran in and hugged my legs, just like Hank's grandson had hugged him. I laughed and cried at the same time, like a person who can't choose which feeling to keep. That night, I cooked dinner the way I hadn't cooked in years. Clam chowder, toasted bread, butter, Salt. Ethan chopped vegetables with me. Rachel washed dishes. The little girl ran in circles in my living room, touching Christmas lights like they were magic. After dinner, Ethan sat at my kitchen table, Ben's old seat, and looked at me. "Mom," he asked, "are you mad at me?" I looked at my son, at Ben's shape in his eyes. I thought about all the years of silence, all the Christmases I told myself, "It's fine," so I wouldn't make my child feel guilty. I spoke slowly. "I'm mad," I said, "but I'm mad at myself too. I thought being a mother meant I had to be strong enough to do it all alone. But I needed you." Ethan lowered his head, then nodded. "I'm going to call more open," he said. "And I want you to come stay with us for a while, at least so I don't have to imagine you sitting here alone listening to the wind." I didn't answer right away. This house is my history. The ocean's rhythm is my clock. But for the first time, the thought of leaving didn't scare me. It made me feel chosen. The next day, Ethan met Hank. I invited Hank and Marissa over for lunch. Not because it was a holiday, but because I wanted the two worlds that had saved me and shaped me to sit at the same table. Hank arrived looking shy. Ethan shook his hand hard. "Thank you," Ethan said. "If you hadn't, I don't even want to think." Hank just nodded, eyes wet. "I only did what I should have done," he said. Marissa looked at Ethan, then at me, and said quietly, "Some returns don't happen because people forget everything. They happen because people decide to start again." That afternoon, when everyone finally left, I stood on my porch and watched the ocean. The wind was still cold. The waves still knocked. But my house wasn't quiet anymore. It held footsteps, laughter, dishes clinking, ordinary sounds I'd convinced myself I wouldn't have again. And if you ask me in AETA terms, was I wrong to call the police to cause trouble? To delay a project right before Christmas? I asked myself that question 100 times while people called me selfish, paranoid, an obstacle. Then I remembered Cody's eyes on my camera. The pen pressed toward me like a trap. The scratch on my lock. The list of elderly homes. And I knew my answer. I wasn't wrong for protecting my home. The only thing I'd been wrong about, years ago, was living like I didn't need anyone. And no one needed me. That Christmas, I lost the illusion that community is always kind, but I got something real, something warmer, a family, not just blood. A family made of people who chose to stand beside each other, even when the whole town turned away.